Welcome to Storytime at the Rubas, a weekly podcast about the Bonnaroo Music and Arts Festival. I'm your host, Sharla.
And I'm Daniel. And if you couldn't tell already, we're on the back porch again, so that's why you're hearing a lot of crickets in the background. But you know what? Last time we did this, I got actually good feedback. People tend to like it. It's like one of those ASMR kind of deals.
It really is an ASMR kind of deal.
Or white noise. Sometimes
white noise, yeah, white noise.
When Brooklyn is crashing over and she's sleeping on the couch, like we turn on like the white noise thing from the Amazon Alexa. We'll do stuff like summer night sounds that sounds exactly like this, or sometimes like thunderstorms or things. You know.
If you live in the South, the southeastern United States, you know this sound very well.
Yeah, that's like the soundtrack of the summer.
It really
crickets
is.
In the
The
background.
crickets and the little bugs.
Yeah, sometimes you might
June bugs.
Yeah, sometimes you might even hear frogs. There's a small creek in our backyard, and there's some frogs living in it. So every once in a while, I hear like, bleh, bleh.
What's those like 13-year bugs?
13? The cicadas?
The cicadas. That's what I was trying to say.
They haven't been out this year, though, have they?
No.
No.
Or were they?
Are we coming up on the 13 years? There's some others that come around.
Yeah,
every
there's like
other year.
different types of cicadas.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a
Well, this isn't a
biologist.
biology podcast. We're not here to talk about that. So we did have plans. We were going to do a special episode that Celia from the Parachute People is going to guest host, but I think we're going to do that next week. We had some plans that didn't work out, but we're going to get that in before Sharla and I head out on a road trip out west. So that is going to be next week's episode. What we are doing this week is something we thought about in the last day or two. We want to do kind of a festival season wrap-up. So we are approaching Labor Day, which I kind of think is not only the unofficial quote-unquote end of the summer. That's not really true because it's not really over until September 20-something.
Yeah.
But it kind of is the end of festival season. I know we have Firefly coming up. Music Midtown isn't happening for reasons that we already talked about the week before last. Moon River is coming up in Chattanooga. You and I will be there for the Saturday of that.
Yeah.
But after that, festival season is kind of coming to a close for 22, right?
For the most part, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still some other things, but
There's
the
a lot
main part of
Yeah.
the festival season, I
There
would say.
are a lot of EDM big shows, not really festivals, that happen like kind of in the cold weather months. So I know through Joe that Alinium is doing the trilogy thing. She was flirting with the idea of going to that. Back in the day, He Who Shall Not Be Named, started with a B, used to do like these big New Year's Eve shows.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that same thing because there's a lot of like New Year's Eve shows.
Yeah, that happens a lot. Old Crow has theirs over at the Ramen. We should try to go to that one of
I
these
have
days.
never been to that show. I've always wanted to go to that, never made it.
The problem is getting a place to stay in Nashville on New Year's Eve. That's hard.
It's also going to a New Year's Eve show. I feel like you give up your New Year's with your friends to do that.
You do. Well, maybe you
So
have
it's
friends
always
in
like
Nashville.
yeah, but they're not going to want to go to they may not necessarily want to go to the same show this
Ah,
year. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Do you want to do New Year's with your friends, or do you want to go to this specific niche concert that only like you and maybe a couple other friends want to go to?
I understand
Or
what
do
you
you want
mean.
to go to your big New Year's party with your friends that all of your friends are going to go to?
You and I did New Year's just like as a couples trip one year, and I always have a great time with you. But I was like, man, I wanted to be partying and doing stupid things with our buddies. Also,
Right.
We did that this past New Year's. We had a lot of people over,
Yeah.
and we blew up fireworks, and we have a big Halloween party coming up to do a bunch of stupid stuff with buddies. But anyways, back to the original point. Yeah, Labor Day is almost here, so festival season is almost over. We want to do a little bit of a wrap-up and review to talk about like what trends we noticed this year, what things are going well, kind of what's happening in the overall community, not just from like a Bonnaroo perspective, but like our whole circle of influence. Like, you know, there's a lot of people that go to Bonnaroo every year, but they also try one or two other ones, right? And all of these things seem to bleed over, not just in terms of friends that go to all these things, but trends that you notice at all of the different festivals.
So, Daniel, you went to Okie this year.
Yes, and I loved it. I fell in love with it.
Okeechobee, I should say.
Yeah, so Brooklyn and I are already starting to put plans together to go again this coming March. Haven't seen a lineup yet. I want to see that to really decide. I know that we're going to have at least a handful of friends there. If the lineup is like more than halfway decent, I'm back because I really fell in love with that festival.
And this was your first year.
Yeah, you know, I had read about it and seen the videos and everything from people that had been going for years. Everybody had good things to say about the weather, the size of the place, kind of the infrastructure of the place. And turns out they were exactly right. The weather was wonderful. I remember it was super cold here in our hometown here in Huntsville about that time, first week of March. But of course, down in kind of central Florida, it was super nice, like low 80s, maybe mid to high 80s at most. A little cool at night. It was perfect. It wasn't too cold. It wasn't too hot. It was just perfect weather. And I'm the kind of person that enjoys spring weather more than fall weather when things are a little cooler. So, oh my gosh, I enjoyed it so much. The vibe there was great. There was a little bit of Florida man there, I thought, but not much. We talked about that when we had our live episode from our camp at Okeechobee. Mitchell had something funny to say about that if you want to go back and listen to that. But, man, I had such a great time. The crowd skewed a little younger than Bonnaroo, I think, but not in a bad way, not in like a frat party way. It was different than I expected in a lot of good ways. I love the infrastructure. I love the different kind of stages they had. I love that it had a slightly more anarchic and Wookiee vibe to it.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, I know we've talked about it before, but how did it compare to Bonnaroo? Like, as far as, I know you had mentioned before,
yeah,
it had more of a, I don't know how to put it, more of a loosey-goosey atmosphere as far as rules and things.
That's a good way to put it, because the security was loosey-goosey. They were definitely checking for, like, stuff that was obviously stupid, but they didn't have any dumb rules against, like, any kind of backpacks. So you could sneak in beer if you really wanted to, if you knew what you were doing. I'm just going to be honest. The campgrounds felt a little bit more like no rules apply out here. It's hard to really put it into words, but there was just a slightly more, like I said, anarchic vibe.
Well, there. I know you could bring in bikes to Okie.
Yeah, I didn't see very many because I don't think a lot of people knew that you could. I saw a lot of people on those like big one-wheel looking skateboards, you know what I'm talking about? I can't remember the name of them.
They're literally called one-wheels.
I saw more of those than I did of bikes, to be honest. And I feel like there were places to lock your bikes, so some people wouldn't steal them, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, there were a lot of fences that you could put up against, so I think I probably will take mine. One of the trends that we're going to talk about this with the other festivals that I first noticed at Okeechobee, since it was the first of the season, was prices on a lot of things have gotten stupid. Pondo talked about this last week when we talked about his Woodstock 99 experience. It was a little ridiculous. I paid $20-something for a good bowl of gumbo while I was waiting on Tame Impala that one day. I was splurging and spoiling myself that day, so I didn't think too much of it. But a lot of things were ridiculously priced at Okeechobee, more so than they were at Bonnaroo, I thought. It kind of set my expectations for the rest of festival season when it came to, like, concessions mostly.
A lot of people were talking about the prices, especially on the Reddits. You know, when Okeechobee was over, everybody was saying how expensive it was, and everybody was so worried about is it's going to set the tone for the rest of the festival season, because it was talking about how ice was like $20 a bag and things like that.
I think the lesson it taught me is that you have to come prepared to serve yourself at a festival. So, like,
bingo,
it's not a bad idea to, like, splurge once or twice and get yourself something really nice and fresh cooked. But I think you have to have the expectation that you're going to bring in a lot of your own food and drinks.
Right.
Like, alcohol, especially, was just absolute insanity at Okeechobee. I didn't buy anything because it was, like, kind of like the bar drinks. Like, if you want to get, like, let's say, like a tequila mixer or something like that, you're going to spend, like, probably $20 after a tip and everything. And $20 will get you, like, a good little thing of Jack Daniels. Right?
Yeah, that'll get you a whole thing of Jack
Daniels.
Yeah.
So all you got to do is just buy it in plastic, you know, because everybody has the rules about glass.
Yeah.
So just get you a plastic thing to bring in, like, your liquor, and you're good. Do not plan on buying any at a place like Okeechobee or really the other ones that we saw this year. I splurged and I got myself something at a Red Bull bar. I got, like, a Red Bull and tequila at Forecastle. We'll talk about that later. And that was like $17. Not worth it. Not worth it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you can make your own things. It's okay.
But do you think the prices really did set the tone? I mean, as far as essentials like ice?
Well, here's the tricky thing, and we talked about this last week on the Woodstock 99 thing. They have a captive audience for the most part. So if you need ice, they've got a monopoly on it. That's the only place that you can buy it. It was reasonable enough at Bonnaroo, but yeah, it was, I never had to buy any at Okeechobee, but it was in that range, $15 to $20. It's kind of silly. you know? So I think that's something that was a bad trend this year. I know that there's a lot of issues with inflation and supply, but there's a fine line where it goes from that to gouging your customers. And it feels like a lot of festivals went over that line this year. I think that's one of the main problems.
So a quick story at Bonnaroo this year, we were parked right next to the fans, those giant fans that they had out, those misting fans.
Yeah.
And I guess they had some kind of ice chest next to those for whatever reason. I don't know if that's how they ran them or if it was ice for the...
Yeah. It would take the moisture out of that big ice box and go into the fan.
Not an engineer, clearly. And every time that an ice truck would pull up to load the ice into the chest, somebody from our camp would go over there and be like, "Hello, sir. May I help you load this?
Yeah, we got free ice.
It's such a beautiful day outside. Let me help you with this. Oh, it's so wonderful. Let me help you load this. Oh, it's such a great day. Are you having a nice day today?" And we would always get a free bag for helping them load.
So look, positivity. I'm going to be honest with y'all. Hey, just between me and you, we preach positivity on all of our stuff in this podcast. Positivity is also a great way to con your way into things.
Goes a long way.
So I did that the first time I was over there chilling with some people under the tent, and I saw those guys with a whole truckload of ice to put in that thing. And I'm like, "Oh, hey, let me help you." And I go through and I chat them up and everything. And at the end, I'm like, "Hey, you mind if I keep one of these?" And they're like, "Yeah, go ahead."
Yeah, and then we came back and JoJo was like, "He gave me a free bag for helping him."
So, just some kindness and positivity will get you places. Yeah. What is it? You capture bugs with honey or something like that? I forget the metaphor.
You get more flies with honey.
Yeah. All right. Anything else I should mention on Okeechobee before we go ahead?
So you said you would go back, but you're waiting for the lineup. So why are you not full send on going back?
Well, okay. Here is the thing for me about Okeechobee. This is a problem for some people. It isn't for others. They're very heavy on EDM at Okeechobee, which isn't a problem.
No, yeah.
But I'm the kind of person that doesn't want to go to a single genre festival. I wouldn't be interested in going to an all-country festival or an all-hip-hop festival or an all-EDM festival. Right, I like being able to see a little bit of everything.
And I get that.
Yeah. So I kind of want to see where they're going. I expect that they'll have a couple of jam bands and probably a big name that will be at other big festivals. Who that will be, I don't really know. One of the solid guesses that they've had on the Okeechobee Reddit that I spied on today was Goose will probably be there because they seem to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a possibility of King Gizzard, and if they're there, I'm absolutely there. If there's just a handful of names that I love that will be at Okeechobee, I'm there. Now, if it's all EDM stuff, I love EDM. I went to the other quite a bit. But if that's all that they got, then I'm not as interested. I'll probably wait for something else, I suppose.
I get that. I definitely get that.
Yeah. So,
and also, I can't speak for you personally, but Bonnaroo is an hour and a half away, whereas that's how many hours away from us?
11 or 12.
Yeah, so.
It's fun. When you got 2 or 3 people, you can kind of take shifts and everything. We went overnight, and we made a trip of it. We stopped by and saw some of my colleagues over at Kennedy, and we stopped over at the beach on the way home. So you can make a nice little road trip out of it. Yeah. So we might do something like that again. I don't know, but we have a long time to plan it.
I didn't go because I can't get the time off work.
Yeah, I know.
Sadly, but.
I do want to get you down there. I do think you would really enjoy it. But we got other plans here in a few weeks. We'll talk about that at the end of the episode. I think we've spoken about Bonnaroo enough in the past 2 months. But are there any trends that you noticed at Roo this year that you want to discuss?
I just don't remember us talking about Bonnaroo. Have we talked about Bonnaroo?
Oh, gosh. What's that?
What's Bonnaroo?
So, I do think there is something we need to discuss that isn't the most positive trend. Pondo mentioned this last week. We talked about it for 5 minutes. Did Bonnaroo feel overly commercial to you this year?
We've been talking about that the past week. And, I know that they had pushed a lot of things into the middle. They had moved those walls where the Watt stage is. They had moved those in, and it looked like they had pushed a lot of the sponsors in to the literal middle of Centeroo. But it really did feel, and maybe if that's not the case, maybe this is just a personal feeling of mine, but it felt like they had a lot of sponsors this year.
They did.
In comparison to other years.
I feel like they, in the past, 6, 7, 8 years, they have had the same number of sponsors. But something I thought about is there is more of a physical sponsor presence in Cinderoo more so than ever.
And it was the big giant displays, I guess.
Yeah, things like that. Now, let's give some due credit. Things like the Bacardi Beach is a good one.
Right.
Like, that makes sense.
You can go over there and you can actually interact with it.
Yeah, you can go play volleyball, and there's like the fake palm trees with misters coming out of them, and it's a cool spot to kind of chill, and you can see the other from there. I think that is a very, very good fit. I'm not against sponsorship, things like that. I love it when they fit the vibe. They have something to do besides just pushing product at you. Actually contribute something and kind of have a Bonnaroo look and feel to it. One of my favorites I've heard a lot of other people mention was 10 years ago when they had the giant inflatable meat wad from Adult Swim. And they had like trippy little shows that they would play in there and stuff. Great fit for Bonnaroo. Can you think of any others that were a good fit this year? Nothing's coming to mind right now.
Well, they had the Coke little display. And I don't know if it was the best fit, but they did give out free Cokes.
Yeah, and I took some of my bourbon and put in it. Because by like Friday, we realized that security was not even checking, so I was bringing in bourbon.
We'll move past that.
Yeah. You heard nothing.
But, I'm trying to think. I'm sitting here thinking in my mind. I can't think of a single sponsor. Well, I mean, I'm sure there are.
Bacardi is all I can think of that, like, actually fit.
I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, they always ask you.
I'm really drawing a blank.
I know. It's funny because they always ask you in the survey, like, what sponsors do you remember? At this point, like,
I remember them all.
2.5 months out, I remember the Coke thing because you just brought it up.
I remember all of
Bacardi. them. Another one that I saw everywhere, not just at Bonnaroo, but like pretty much everywhere that we went, Forecastle also, we'll talk about that in a moment, was the Liquid Death. They have a little house castle looking thing.
Well, yeah.
Somebody is putting a lot of money into marketing Liquid Death.
It's apparently the official, like, water of Live Nation or something like that.
Maybe that has something to do with it.
No, like, seriously. Like,
something... Okay. This is just me, but something is strange about that house because, like, people tell me that they ask you to sign over your soul, so to speak, to go in. And, like, look, there's a couple of things we don't talk about on this podcast, and that's religion and politics, but I'm just going to say signing over my soul doesn't sound like a great thing to do. I remember that Simpsons episode. That didn't really work out so well for Bart. Milhouse had his soul, and that didn't really work out. Yeah. I'm not signing it over to some, like, corporate entity. That's kind of weird.
Honestly, I'll just tell it straight. I was sitting there drawing a blank, but I'm just going to tell it straight. I don't need to go to Bonnaroo and see a gene tree.
Oh, that one. Okay, well, that fit for us because we were doing Jorts Friday.
No, it does not fit. I don't need to go to Bonnaroo and see a tree made out of old jeans. That's just, them strips are going to end up in a landfill somewhere. I don't need to see that.
You would be the person to ask about that. Can that denim be recycled in any way?
I don't know, but eventually it's probably going to end up in a landfill, so I have no idea.
Oh, man, I never thought about it that way. It's not very sustainable, is it?
Lee Jeans.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s. They shut the factory in my hometown closed and put about 700 people out of work. Yeah. So I'm kind of...
yes, you have some prior history.
And I just, that's not something I want to see at a music festival. Like, I don't want to see a gene tree at a music festival.
Yeah.
I don't want to see a House of Hulu at a music festival.
Hulu, yes, I forgot.
I mean... Verizon, I thought, this will be a cool sponsor because I'll be able to have phone service. Never had phone service inside Cinderoo.
There's one other thing that I want to...
I'm just being honest.
Yeah, I understand. There's one other thing I want to mention as a negative trend before I think we need to, like, turn more positive. Mm-hmm. They dialed the needle up on the sponsor activations, but it seemed to go down on other things. Like... Why didn't we have the Bonnaroo Beacon this year, the newspaper? Why didn't we have fireworks after Stevie Nicks played?
Why didn't we have the Bonnaroo census?
A lot of corners were cut, but still a lot of the sponsor presence increased.
Went up and up and up.
Yeah, I mean that's concerning to me. It's very concerning to me.
Now, our friend Eric did a survey a while back, and he surveyed, I think he had 75 people or so answer his survey, and one of the questions that he asked was what sponsors would you like to see at Bonnaroo? And there was a really, really, really good answer in there, and I don't know why this company has not tapped into the festival market. I have no idea why. Liquid IV.
Oh yeah, that would be perfect.
That would be so perfect, and I don't know why they haven't got into the festival market yet.
I've heard them advertise on podcasts, so I mean they've got some marketing money to throw around.
I've seen them in Instagram advertising and stuff, but I don't know why they're not in the festival.
It would be such a good fit. It would be a better fit than Liquid Death, I think.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we need to be on brand and be more positive. What kind of
absolutely?
I'm being
too negative.
What kind of positive trends did you notice this year?
What positive trends did I notice?
Yeah.
You go first.
Okay, so I think the community, not just with Bonnaroo, but the overall festival community was stronger than ever this year.
Absolutely, 100.
Everybody was dying to get back after the bad part of COVID. Now that it's over, we got vaccines, and if you catch it, it's just basically a cold for a week or so for most people nowadays. So it's not the end of the world. Everybody was striving to get back together in person in a big group setting like that for so long. So being able to do that made for some really good vibes. I don't know how else to put it. I know that's a little cliche, but
you are absolutely 10-10 on that.
Yeah.
Phenomenal community presence this year.
It was definitely like that at Okeechobee too. That was just like a fresh slap of water to the face once I finally saw that at the beginning of March. That was my first big event like that.
And I would also add to that, all of the community events and all of the campground plazas, phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
Phenomenal, absolutely.
Call some good ones out.
Call some good ones out? Okay, House of Yes. As far as campground plazas,
yes.
House of Yes brought it 100%.
Oh, they always do. It's no surprise.
I mean, just a 10-10. I mean, absolutely brought it. The stage over there by Galactic Giddy Up, the Bonnaroo staff that was running that,
wonderful production there.
Oh my gosh, the production they had on that stage just was mind-blowing. For that to be just like a smaller campground stage, just mind-blowing. And we've said it before, and we've called them out before, but they were just so helpful with, the little show that we threw, with Flip Turn and, all of our stuff. But they were just so incredible, and just shout out to them. I mean, just 10-10. Perfect.
Something else that I want to call out that I saw at Okeechobee and Bonnaroo this year is there seemed to be a good focus on having some campground activations that were just places to chill out, places to catch your breath and maybe do yoga, meditate, things like that. Look inward. I think bringing in the therapy gecko this year was a fantastic idea.
Yes.
Something goofy, but it has a little introspection, cooked into it. With his whole
a lot of
gimmick,
people I know loved therapy gecko.
They had some things kind of not to that extent with the therapy gecko, but they had some things like that at Okeechobee where they had some low-key music so you could just sit there and chill and meditate and things like that. We go to these things and we want to have a big rager, and that's great. That's fun. But sometimes you want to be in a space where you can collect your thoughts, have a quieter moment just by yourself or with friends. And I'm glad that that's a bit of a trend, that festivals are making sure that there's a space for that.
Exactly. I agree, Daniel.
Do you want to move over to Forecastle? That was the other big one that we went to this year over in Louisville with Joe. What did you think about that one? That was our first experience going to Forecastle. I'd heard about it for years, but this was our first time.
So we were just there for one day, right?
Yeah, just the day we took our niece Lacey to go see Tame Impala.
Okay, so it really reminded me of the festival that we used to have in Alabama, in Birmingham, Sloss Fest. I think it was a fantastic mid-tier festival.
I agree. I think it was very well run. It was easy to get from stage to stage. It was in a good location, kind of central to Louisville, next to the river. The river made for a really good scene with the backdrop of the one big stage where Tame played.
I was not a fan of the pricing for the food, things like that.
Yeah, that's what we said, yeah.
Being there all day long. You can't be in a city festival. You can't just go back to your campsite and get something to eat or whatever. And you can't really bring in a hamburger. I mean, you're gonna have to buy something there, or could you? I don't know. I don't know. I didn't really read everything, but the food was just really, really, really expensive. And I wasn't a fan of the food pricing, but that's any festival. You're gonna have that anywhere. But it was really well put together, I thought, for a mid-tier festival.
Yeah,
city festival.
The one critique I have of Forecastle is it didn't really feel like it had an identity. Like, it feels like it could be a mid-tier music festival in any given town. Nothing about it really, like, screamed Louisville or Kentucky to me. They didn't really have any theme with, like, racehorses or bourbon or Colonel Sanders or any of the number of things that you think of when you think of Louisville, whatever. It could have been plopped in any, like, mid-sized town, and it would have made sense to have been there. You mentioned Sloss Fest. They were very heavy on the industrial imagery since it was like at Sloss Furnace.
You're right, yeah.
That historic industrial place in Birmingham.
They did a good job of branding. Yeah, you're right. I never thought about that, but that's true.
Forecastle, I can't think of anything that said Louisville.
That made it like uniquely Louisville. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my one critique of that. Other than that, it was a standard Live Nation production. It was pretty good. There wasn't anything that just like was mind-blowing about it, but I still enjoyed it. I think places like that are great in that they make the one-day option a good one for a lot of people that are just dying to see one band, like we went to go see Tame.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that those type of things still exist. We're going to a similar one that I feel does have an identity tied to its town in Moon River here in about a month over in Chattanooga. Mm-hmm. Taco and Barry have been pestering us to go to that for years, and we're finally going to go this year because, again, going in for one artist. Who is it, Sharla?
Fat Brian.
Yeah, I know. But I finally get to see the National as well, and we're just going for that one day because you want to see him, and I'm like, yeah, I'll take you. I get to see the National. It'll be great. We can go hang with Taco and go bug our friend Lindsay, Bonnaroo of the Year, because he runs the bar there. So if you're going to Moon River, go troll him, but also tip him at the bar over there. He's hard to miss because he's very loud.
Yeah, he's going to be serving drinks somewhere.
Yeah.
So find him.
He has served drinks at Bonnaroo before. Remember, he did that show with the Abbott brothers last summer.
At the Bonnaroo farm, yeah.
Oh, by the way, do you think they'll ever bring that back?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a very good question.
They had 3 shows last year.
Was that just a COVID thing, or are we ever going to do that again?
They had some country artist, I can't remember who it was, and then Billy Strings, and then a 3-night run of the Abbott brothers. And
was
I remember,
it like Jason Aldean or somebody?
It may have been. I can't remember because it was somebody that I wasn't super interested in. But after the Abbott brothers show, on that specialty social account that they made for the Bonnaroo farm, they said, you'll hear more from us in the future.
I did, yeah.
And that's been a year now, and we haven't heard anything else from them.
Do you think they should keep doing it?
Yes, I do.
I think so too. I'm kind of like, because I would go.
The problem is I don't think it's sold as well as they had hoped.
Yeah, true.
Billy Strings wasn't as popular as he is now, even a year ago. I think they oversaturated it with 3 nights of the Abbott brothers. I think if it was 1 or 2, it would have sold better.
See, the wild thing, wasn't that like the return of the Abbott brothers or some jazz like that?
I can't remember.
It was something like that.
The return wasn't really something that was marketable to me because I've seen them like 4 or 5 times now at this point.
Well, no. Well, where I'm going with this is I remember, and we talked about this before, I remember walking through the parking lot when we saw the Abbott brothers.
Abbott.
Whatever. And, well, no, I shouldn't say that. We should get it correct. Abbott brothers, I think is how you say it.
I think it might be something that depends on the part of the country you're in. It's like Coke and Pop.
I think it's Abbott brothers. But anyways, I remember walking through the parking lot, and there were tags from like all 50 states for real. Like there was like Massachusetts tags, like Washington State tags.
I didn't realize they had
Montana
a following
tags.
like that.
Like they have a for real following.
It was like almost like the kind of crowd that you would see like Dave Matthews or Fish or something like that.
Yes.
People tailgating, coming from all over.
Yes, people were coming from like all over the country because it was like their like first concert and since COVID started or like.
Well, I mean that makes sense.
Forever or whatever.
I feel like they could do it. Like, we went to the new amphitheater that's in that quarry or whatever the heck, just south of Nashville to see Third Eye Blind about a month ago.
I was going to say, when people come to Bonnaroo, they come from across the country. They come from across the country, but they only come one time a year. And Manchester is just a little small town, in the middle of nowhere, really. And are people really going to drive that far, because there's not a very big population in Manchester, enough to. But then you got to think about the caverns is also.
It's even further out.
Even further out there.
Yeah.
But then also the caverns, has a unique draw to it. So I don't know.
Well, Bonnaroo should have a unique draw, but I feel like when they had those shows at the farm, whatever they called it, they didn't really lean much on like Bonnaroo traditions and imagery.
Exactly. I saw so many people posting on social media thinking that they were in Nashville when they went to the Bonnaroo farm.
Yeah.
They would be like, "Oh, it's a great night in Nashville."
It'll be a little easier now. Now, if there's like a permanent arch that they can put that LED up on, it'll have a more Bonnaroo vibe to it. But that's something that they would have to do if they're going to bring that back. And we're talking about trends, and I do think that is a trend that Bonnaroo is eventually going to jump on, is having more events on the property. They've spent so much money to improve the property, and they've kind of done the proof of concept last year by showing that people will at least come out. I just don't think it was very well marketed. I think they've got to give a little bit more of a Bonnaroo vibe to it. And I think they've got to bring in artists that will make people want to drive. Maybe they even need to do one-night camping. I don't know. But I feel like if they brought in, like, let's say, Fish to do a night or two.
People would drive for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to bring in someone that people's going to drive for sure.
I'll give you an example. I was kind of following the Dead and Company tour this past summer, because sometimes they would do live streams and such. They played one show in this town in Pennsylvania that I'd never heard of, and I looked it up, and it was a super, super small town, maybe even smaller than Manchester, but it was almost an hour outside of Pittsburgh, and they had put in like this big amphitheater there, and Dead and Company played it. People will travel to see them.
Yes.
So I feel like that was a good example of the type of thing that they could be doing.
Exactly.
Because Manchester is, a little more than an hour from Nashville, I believe.
Right.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I feel like the ingredients are there, but they're not putting them all together in the same stew yet for them to do that.
Right. Just like my last thought was not in the same stew. I apologize.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
I'm only drinking water, so.
Yeah, for once. Yeah. Any other positive trends this year, Sharla? No.
I mean, no, there was a lot. I just can't think of them right now.
One other thing that I did want to talk about a little bit separately is one trend in festival season 22 was that booking was tricky for people this year. Because a lot of bands were, doing like COVID protocols. Sometimes they would miss a couple of shows because like somebody in the touring camp would catch it and they had to like lay low for a week. Some acts that thought they were going to tour didn't. It was very, very tricky, and I feel like all of us owe cutting the bookers a lot of slack this year, and maybe even probably owe them a round of applause.
Oh, for sure.
For pulling off what they did, given all of the problems they ran into. That said, I feel like a trend is we're going to see a lot better booking next year.
I agree 100%.
Now that, a lot more is known about how to navigate COVID, now that it's much more of a manageable problem. Still a problem, let's be clear. But it's much more of a manageable problem, and I think we all know how to have strategies to combat it now.
The 2020 Bonnaroo lineup.
Yeah. Oh, it's too good for this world.
The one that we did not deserve.
Yeah? What about it?
No, like you said, it was just too good for this world.
Well, I mean, that was what was happening. That's where things were trending. At that point, in a pre-COVID world, Bonnaroo was able to pull out all the stops. they were not able to do that, supposedly last year if we had actually had it, and they weren't able to do it this year because we're still dealing with the after effects of a lot of things.
I honestly think that lineup rivaled the 2013 lineup.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely did. It 100% did.
It was the best. I think that was the best festival lineup I've ever seen.
So now I'm thinking, in 23, we'll get the lineup, first week or two of January. A lot of the dust settled. We know now how to handle the post-COVID world. I feel like they should know that the 23 lineup has to compete with themselves with the 20 lineup.
Well, yeah.
So I think they have to. They didn't sell as many tickets this year as they would have liked. I think they have to pull out the stops next year to really make a splash. Maybe they need to plan on breaking even or even losing money to make a long-term investment. Like, they have to have a blockbuster lineup this coming year to come back from the low attendance this year and to show the rest of the festival world, like, hey, Bonnaroo is still one of the major players. You better believe it. If they were to come back with a lineup that was about the same quality as 22, it wouldn't be the end of the world. All of us, regular Bonnaroovians would be there. But other than that, I don't think they're going to bring in a lot of new business. Unless they bring in a lineup that is going to blow minds. It's going to have some acts that aren't anywhere else. It's going to have a combination of acts that aren't anywhere else. A couple of other surprises. Today, I was just thinking about 2016. We went to see Third Eye Blind a couple of weeks ago, whatever. They had Third Eye Blind that year in 2016. I totally forgot about that. And I watched a YouTube video of that show. It was jam-packed. Even though that was a low-attended year, it was the other tent when they still had that. It went back to the Ferris wheel. And everybody was singing every word. Bring in another act like that. A number of acts like that. Even some big legends like we had with Herbie Hancock this year. That was, them dipping the toe in what Bonnaroo should be.
Right, exactly.
So it's got to be that eclectic, out of left field, blockbuster lineup. And I'm just going to say it. They really need to bring in a blockbuster headliner next year, too.
I thought you were going to say Daft Punk.
Well, that'd be a big one. I don't think that's going to happen.
I'm teasing.
Yeah. Daft Punk is going to play the Galactic Giddy-Up. Yeah.
The Galactic Giddy-Up.
No, but seriously, though, there was some conversation about this past week because Festival did one of those, reply on this thing Twitter deals where it was like, what's the best concert you saw, the worst, the last one? And there was a big conversation about Paul McCartney in 2013. It is insane that 10 years later, that is still generating good word of mouth for Bonnaroo.
Absolutely. People still say that's the best concert. I mean, I do.
Yeah, absolutely. But other than U2, maybe Dead and Company, Elton John, when have they reached those heights since? Have they?
I don't think they have.
I think they really swung for the fences and almost got there with U2. But, I mean, let's be honest. I love U2, but they have become a little bit divisive, especially after they put that album in everybody's phone without their permission, They became a bit of a joke on South Park and things like that. Culturally, I don't feel like they're nearly as relevant as they were 15, 20 years ago. So I don't think it was the big splash. It wasn't a McCartney level, even though a lot of people thought it was going to be. It was for me because I love them.
Right.
But for the whole Bonnaroo community, I don't think it was. But also, let's look at that year, too. A lot of the undercard on that particular year, what was it, 17 that U2 played? They had the Chili Peppers another night. That was fantastic. You got to pay stadium pricing to see the Chili Peppers now. So that was a bargain in retrospect. But other than that, the rest of that lineup was kind of a stinker.
Yeah.
So they've got to have the best of both worlds. And I do feel that's where they need to get to next year. Bonnaroo 23 has to have a lineup that a lot of people will consider the best Bonnaroo lineup ever.
Right. Exactly.
Or then we got to have a talk about how Bonnaroo's in trouble if they don't. Because I think we have a lot of people that go because they're going to continue to go. They go for the community. They go for the vibe because they go for the vacation. But I think 22 was a lesson to Bonnaroo that the lineup is what sells tickets to everybody else. The 30,000 people that weren't there, that would have been there this year, weren't there because they didn't see a good lineup. Just my perspective. What do you think?
I agree, Daniel.
So they've got to knock it out of the park. Anyway, that's enough about that. You got any other thoughts?
No, I agree with what you said 100%.
All right, good deal. Hey, so we got some other stuff we're going to talk about here in a second, but Sharla, can you run through our Patreons?
Sure, absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Yeah, go through our names, then I'll tell them a little bit about it after.
Okay, because I keep mispronouncing the last names.
Go for
I'm
it.
I'm teasing. Okay. Perry, Preston, a.k.a. Presto, Nick, Maddie, Sean, McFerg, Andrew, William, John, Captain Dan, Lucy, Benjamin, Ross, Kent, Michael, Randy, Joshua, Madison, Scott, Greg, Eric and Ben, Natalie, Beyond the Hypnotic, that's Jace.
That's Jace.
Heaven, Jay, Chloe, and Sean.
Yeah, thanks everybody. You can find more at patreon.com/Rubus. So for the next period, I think it is helping us with our Burning Man project. Tell you about that in a moment. After that, once we get back from that and the dust settles on that, 80% of everything will go to the Bonnaroo Works Fund. The remaining 20% will fund something fun at next year's Rubus party. Our patrons will help decide that. Again, that is at patreon.com/Rubus. Anything else on that, Charles?
Yeah, I think you covered it.
I saw Ben and Eric's name. It reminded me. Shout out to them because I want to hang. Let's go party again soon.
Oh, yeah.
They live 20 minutes up the road, and I haven't seen them in a month. I like how we're using our podcast just to like pester our friends to hang out now.
Hey, let's go play some trivia.
Trivia? Yeah, trivia.
We always seem to like miss each other playing trivia.
Well, what happens is they will inevitably have you come over to their house and you will play this dice game and get more drunk than you intended to. That's what happens every time.
I like the dice game.
I mean, I do too, but you go over there and you're either going to regret...
Die?
Maybe. Anyway, patreon.com/Rubus. We will talk more about that. Do you want to talk a little bit about the Burning Man trip we got going up? We're going to talk more with Celia about that next week.
Well, I am extremely nervous and I can't stop pooping.
What? Why? That's TMI.
I'm nervous about it.
You nervous poops?
I'm nervous that I'm not going to be cool enough for it. That's my biggest fear.
Okay, I'm going to tell you something. I had been worrying about that, but the more I read from their Reddit and their message boards, the more I realize I do not have to worry about that. I think they are so accepting in the kind of levels that we're going to be accustomed to from Bonnaroo. There is a little bit of snark there, but I think it's mostly in their online presence.
Well, I will talk about it, next week with Celia, but I really, really, really had to put it out of my mind this week. I've really, really, really had to work hard that... Well, let me finish. I've really, really had to work hard and put it out of my mind that what I've been looking at as far as Burning Man all these years on Instagram, those are models.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that's not real. Because I've literally, all these years, I've been Googling things, or I'm not Googling, but I've been looking up on Instagram things like Burning Man outfits. Don't look that up. That is like so bad for my mental health. And that's not real. That's literally not real. That is what they call a, quote, plug and play camp. That is something that...
Sparkle ponies. That's the name I'm being seen.
And I've seen that too. Sparkle ponies. That's someone that, has been... Well, how would you explain it, Daniel? Someone that's been...
Somebody that's there for the gram.
There for the gram. Exactly, yeah. Someone that's been pretty much taken there, has had everything set up for them, has not had to do any work to get there. Someone that gets... a daily shower provided to them, someone that doesn't have to do anything. So someone that's truly 100% vacationing it up.
Burning Man doesn't and will never have like a VIP section.
Right.
So I feel like some people will troll the people that are trying to create their own VIP experience, if that makes sense.
Right. And absolutely, I'm not saying at all everybody that's on Instagram is like that. Not saying that whatsoever at all. But the things that I have been looking at all these years, I have to go back and tell myself that's not a real representation.
Yeah.
I just have to keep, telling myself that.
I don't think that's what we're going to see for the most part.
Right. I think, looking at that has not had the best effect on my mental health.
Yeah.
And I think watching more realistic videos like 24 Hours at Burning Man.
Yeah, that Mark
really,
guy.
really good one. I think his name is Mark Day or something.
Yeah, that's him. He's like this dude with a Scottish accent, and he
Right.
has like a dyed like goatee, and he's such a character. He's almost like somebody from an anime, and I feel like he's got the best YouTube videos.
Right, he's
that
one of the
show.
top recommended,
Yeah.
like Burning Man YouTubers.
We were watching that, and I realized that I had a lot of misconceptions as well.
Right.
I had kind of worried about that too. I'm like, oh man, I don't want to have to like dress like I'm in the Fallout
Right.
video games just to be here. But
Right,
then
exactly.
I got to looking at it, and then I saw most of the guys my age are dressed the same way that I dress when I go to Bonnaroo. Just
Right.
like shorts, tank top, Hawaiian shirt, something
'Cause
goofy.
This
You know.
whole time I've been worried. I've been like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have the right type of like leather pack, and I'm seeing all these classifieds, $300 leather pack. Oh, I got to buy this, or whatever. But
Yeah.
I just, things like that are just, it's breaking down my nerves. So that in itself is making me so nervous, but I just keep having to remind myself all that's not real.
You're right.
So we'll talk more about that, I guess, next week with Celia.
Yeah, one other thing that I did want to mention, that I'm sure I'll talk with her about, is part of the reason I'm wanting to go is this is a bit of a fact-finding mission for me. I am so intrigued by the idea that a giant event like this can be put together almost entirely by the community that goes. So I feel like when we go to Bonnaroo, like 90-something% is put together by the company that's putting it on. A small percent is put on by like us and our friends and things like that, and like some of the other groups that they bring in, like House of Yes. But still, for the most part, you're going to Cinderoo and you're seeing things that the company has put there for your entertainment. When we go to Burning Man, everything is going to be put there by the community that goes to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm interested in, because I want to learn how that can be implemented at Bonnaroo. We're going to talk way more about this in the coming year, because I've got another project that I'm not really ready to talk about yet. I am very, very interested in how we can better curate our own community at Bonnaroo, and I feel like there is a lot to be learned from Burning Man that can be used at Bonnaroo. I don't want to say too much yet, because I have a very big project that's going to be a thing everybody will know about in the second half of 2023, but this is partially a research trip for me, to find out how that is done there, so I can learn how we can do it here. When I had Rick Farman on earlier this year to talk about like how Bonnaroo got put together and how it evolved, he was one of the co-founders of Bonnaroo with Superfly. Not involved anymore, but he was one of the main guys that kind of turned it into what it is. The code at Bonnaroo came from the principles of Burning Man. A lot of the stuff in the campgrounds came from them going to Burning Man and being like, hey, this would be cool if we did this back home at Bonnaroo. I think it's time to take that up another notch. I'll have way more to say about that in the coming months, but that's just all to say. I'm going to learn, because I want to see what we can do at Roo.
Agreed.
To make it more of the community-driven event that I really suspect that this is at Burning Man. That's all I'll say for now.
Yes.
Charlotte, I think that's all that we wanted to go through this week. Except for one other thing. Our 100th episode is coming up. I think we'll do a couple of mini episodes from Burning Man or whatever, but when we get back, we're going to do our 100th episode. Can you believe we're like at 100 now? That's insane. So, again, this is talking about Celia. Her ear is probably burning tonight. It was her idea. We're going to get as many people on as we can that started going in 2013. So if that was your first year, please hit us up. We will get you on the show. We talked about that earlier with Paul in that wonderful show. I'm sure that will be a big topic of conversation. That was a big deal, not just that show, but 2013 in general, because so many of us kept coming back year after year after year, and it's about to be the 10-year anniversary of that. So talking about that anniversary on our 100th episode made a lot of sense. So that's going to be a big episode. It's going to be a fun one coming up here in a couple of weeks after we get back from Burning Man.
I'm very excited.
Yeah. Charlotte, are you ready? We leave next Friday.
Yes.
It's going to be a long road trip. Again, if you are on our route, I think we're going to be hitting up a couple of other Bonnaroovians on our big road trip. So if you are on our big circle going from, like, let's say, Albuquerque, Vegas, Colorado, we're coming through Denver, and then Kansas City. If you're on that way, hit us up. We'd love to stop and see you for a minute. Anything else this week, Charlotte?
Yes. Have a rootastic day.
I saw you say that earlier. Have a corntastic day. That's for Brooklyn.
No.
No.
My saying is going to be, have a rootastic day.
Fantastic day. All right, cool. All right, everyone. We'll see you one last time before our trip next week. Get out there and radiate positivity.
Bye.
See you soon.